Tradition tells us that the poet Homer composed his epic, the Odyssey, in the 700s BC in ancient Greece, telling the story of wandering Trojan War veteran Odysseus and his journey to return home. The Odyssey is a foundational work of the Western canon. Our story begins with Odysseus' son Telemachus, who's having a small problem. Telemachus' father, Odysseus, and his crew have been lost at sea for so long that his attractive mother Penelope is getting hit on by basically everyone, and her 108 suitors have moved into the palace of Odysseus in their home in Ithaca. The suitors won't leave until Penelope agrees to marry one of them. The gods of Olympus, meanwhile, are eating this story up like a daytime soap opera, and some of them are rooting for Odysseus to make it back, especially Athena, who kind of carries the entire story on her back by constantly fiddling with everything. Athena decides to pop down to the mortal plane disguised as a wise friend of Telemachus' dad, although this disguise is kind of pointless since Telemachus can tell it's really Athena. Athena tells Telemachus to give the suitors an eviction notice and to get on a boat and look for news of Odysseus, and then to come home and kill all the suitors when they don't leave. So that's pretty metal. Penelope, meanwhile, is fending off the suitors by insisting that she needs time to finish some weaving before she decides who she's ready to marry, but she keeps unraveling everything she's done every evening. Telemachus takes a ship and sails with Athena and some bros to find news of his dad. First, he stops off at an island called Pylos and meets up with a guy called Nestor, who sends his son to join Telemachus' crew. Then Telemachus goes to Sparta, where he meets Menelaus and his wife Helen, as in the Helen who the Trojan War was fought over, and they tell Telemachus about Odysseus. Meanwhile, the suitors have found out about the Odysseus reconnaissance mission, and they decide to kill Telemachus once he gets home. Pro tip: killing her son is what every grieving widow wants in order to be convinced to marry you. At this point, the story decides to ignore Telemachus for the next 8 chapters, and instead we transition to Odysseus, who has been stuck for years on the island of Calypso, a nymph and daughter of the Titan Atlas. Like lots of Greek villains, modern stories sometimes portray Calypso as a misunderstood victim, but here she's just a pain in the butt, who won't let Odysseus leave because she's in love with him. Lord of Olympus Zeus is rooting for the Penelope-Odysseus ship on the soap opera that is the mortal world, so he tells Hermes to go to Calypso and let Odysseus go. Odysseus makes a raft and gets the Hades out of there, but sea god Poseidon wrecks Odysseus' boat. More on that in a second. Odysseus' raft crashes on the land of Scheria, but Athena jumps in and tells Nausicaa, daughter of the local king Alcyoneus, to go save Odysseus. Athena continues to help out by giving directions and using magic to make everybody nice to Odysseus, although she may have overdone it a bit because King Alcyoneus is going to straight up tell random vagrant Odysseus that he can marry Nausicaa if he wants, although Odysseus declines, wanting to return home to Penelope. The next day, a bard sings a tale of the Trojan War, and Odysseus starts crying as he remembers it, so Alcyoneus makes Odysseus explain his entire life story, so we spend the next 4 chapters doing that. Odysseus tells how after the Trojan War, he and his men sacked the village of the Cicones and stole all their wives, as one does, because the Cicones supported the Trojans. But Odysseus' men took too long, and Ciconian allies came and killed a bunch of Odysseus' men, but the rest escaped. The next misadventure is the land of the Lotus Eaters, where magical lotuses make you want to stay forever if you eat them, and after that, the adventurers arrive at the island of the Cyclops. This is probably the most famous story in the Odyssey, in which the Cyclops Polyphemus traps Odysseus' men, and Odysseus blinds the Cyclops, incurring the perpetual wrath of the Cyclops' dad, Poseidon, who starts going out of his way to kill Odysseus. As the journey continues, the crew find the Lord Aeolus, who has a sack containing the 4 winds, which will help everybody get home. But Odysseus' men let all the wind out, so Aeolus says, tough luck. Next we meet the Lystragonians, who want to eat the sailors, and the witch Circe, who turns half of Odysseus' remaining men into pigs. Hermes shows up to be Odysseus' wingman to seduce Circe, so that Odysseus can convince her to lift her pig-making spell, which Odysseus does. As you might start to notice, Odysseus is only faithful to Penelope by Greek standards. So once everything is sorted out, Odysseus and the crew just sort of hang out on the island of Circe for an entire year, to the point that Circe is like, guys, are you going to actually go home? Everybody agrees to get going, but Circe tells them to take a detour to the underworld and meet up with the dead prophet Tiresias, because sure, why not? Tiresias helpfully tells Odysseus the manner in which he's going to die someday, and Odysseus is like, cool. They also run into various random dead people, like Odysseus' mom for some reason, and Odysseus' former commander Agamemnon. Agamemnon had lots of his own stuff going on, as detailed in the famous Greek tragedy Agamemnon, but in our story he serves as a sort of reflection of Odysseus, because his wife betrayed and killed him, while Penelope was faithful to Odysseus. After our death detour, the crew circles back to Circe, who tells them about all the awful stuff coming up next once they try to go home. Namely the sirens, whose singing tries to kill everybody, and then some sea monsters, and then they all land on the island of the sacred cows of the sun god. And because it's Odysseus's dim-witted men, they make burgers. So Zeus kills them all, and Odysseus washes ashore on Calypso's island, finally bringing us back up to the present. Although we're only half done with the 24 books of the Odyssey at this point, basically all of the actual seafaring journey is over now. Well, almost. Poseidon shipwrecks Odysseus on his final journey back home, once more for old time's sake. But Odysseus washes up in Ithaca anyway. Athena says hello using another disguise, because she really likes doing that, I guess. Almost as much as Odysseus, who Athena makes look like a hobo. A lot of this story is people pretending to be other people for kind of no reason except for the drama. Sadly, Homer did not have access to tvtropes.com since he's inventing most of the tropes. Hobo Odysseus reconnects with his favorite slave Eumaeus, but Odysseus doesn't tell Eumaeus who he is, and the story finally reveals the fate of Telemachus, who's on his way home. Telemachus picks up a random prophet who tells Telemachus how to avoid the ambush we learned about a long time ago. And then Telemachus arrives at Ithaca too, where he reunites with his dad. Odysseus and Telemachus get to work on Operation Just Murder All the Suitors. It's that simple. But first, they do an elaborate charade where Odysseus keeps pretending to be a hobo for a bit and goes to visit the palace. Odysseus gets into a fistfight with another hobo because the palace is his turf or whatever, and then Odysseus and Telemachus hide all of the suitors' weapons. Odysseus also gets himself into an archery contest with the suitors, a contest which Penelope says will determine her new husband. Odysseus shoots an arrow through a row of axes, which if you've ever seen the logo for the financing company TSG at the start of a movie, they're referencing this scene. Then Odysseus reveals himself to the suitors and just slaughters everybody. And Athena is still totally on Team Odysseus because she diverts spears thrown at him by the suitors and hypes him up to kill everybody, including any slaves who weren't loyal to Odysseus. After Telemachus and his dad have their father-son bonding time doing some carnage, Odysseus has to convince Penelope that it's really him, because she's not buying it. But Odysseus convinces her with an anecdote about how he built their bedroom. Since Athena had Odysseus kill everybody, the suitors' families show up to take revenge, but Athena cleans up her own mess by just telling everybody to cut it out. And they kind of have to because she's a god. A genuine classic Deus Ex Machina ending. In going through the story of Odysseus, I can kind of see why the philosopher Socrates said that the poets corrupted the morals of the people of Greece. Homer depicted the heroes and gods alike as very amoral and selectively just, and a lot of the characters kind of suck as people. But the story is compelling. I kind of want to check out that Ralph Fiennes version of the Odyssey after making this video, or maybe that one musical version everyone younger than me is obsessed with. Thanks for watching.